Hey students, today we're going to be talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh. And if you haven't read that text yet, I encourage you to go and read our text, and that way we can dive in. Um, I just want to introduce this idea of reading ancient literature. Some of you may love to read, some of you may not like to read. Some of you may like old books, and some of you may not. And so just want to talk about this new venture as we get started. Um, I think that we as Christians kind of have a unique opportunity here. More than anybody else alive, we are reading ancient texts day after day after day. Every time we read the Bible, we're reading a collection of ancient literature. And so I think we're kind of uniquely situated. Uh, we're familiar with ancient prose and we're familiar with ancient themes. Some of them to the point that we're over familiar, and maybe we need to gain an appreciation for the strangeness of this ancient literature. But I do think we're kind of in a unique situation um, in this. So I just want to mention that you do have a founding to read these old books. You do have background in this more than you might realize. That said, there are still specific approaches that we need to take in how we read ancient literature. So the first thing I would encourage you as you read something like Gilgamesh or a later text, don't get bogged down in the details. Do not slow down. When you slow down, you're going to get stuck in the mire. Um, this book is old. You're not going to understand every single thing the first time you read it. So I just would encourage you just to keep trucking. Look out for things that repeat. You're going to see names, you're going to see places and themes. That's what's important, right? Not the little things that drag you into one paragraph for 20 minutes. I would also encourage you to connect what you read to what you already know. Use what you've learned in your other classes. Use what you learned in your personal reading, your own what you bring to the table. Try and interact with this text and have some ownership of it by connecting it to what you're already familiar with. And finally, I just would encourage you, it's going to get weird. Lean into it. The old ancient world is going to surprise you. Um, it doesn't have the things that you would expect for it to have, and it's going to have tons of things that make us uncomfortable. Lean into it. Just be open to it. Try and take it on its own terms and let it stand out. Let it be something different from today's world. Um, and I think that way we'll be able to appreciate it much more. Okay, so what's the setting of our text? The setting is Uruk. This is a great city along the Euphrates River. At the time of the writing of the text, we estimate there are about 40,000 people there. Um, we don't excavate this city until 1850, right? So this is not something that we have a lot of knowledge about for a long time. Really, just 150 years that we kind of have this understanding of Uruk. We found that they have a pretty extensive canal system, and we found that the city is dedicated to the gods Anu and Inanna, Inanna being Ishtar. Um, we want to compare the size of this city. So Cleveland, Tennessee, in the city proper, has about 50,000 people. So just for reference as far as population goes. Okay, so this is some of the archaeological excavation of Uruk. We find temples and water channels. Um, as a matter of fact, we have the remains of a ziggurat here. And then on top of this ziggurat, we think that there's something there called the White Temple. Of course, there's not very much left of it today. But little bits of things that we have found are gypsum tablets, cylinder seals, accounting from the temple. We've found in the foundation there's bones, animal bones, from a leopard and from a lion. We found other ritually buried objects that are there. And so this is just a really interesting place here the remains of the ziggurat. Now, that's our setting, and our genre for our story is epic poetry. An epic poem is a long narrative poem about the deeds of heroes, and Gilgamesh is our titular hero. The Gilgamesh epic is the oldest surviving great work of literature. Um, this is a work that was transmitted from generation to generation orally. We think it was, written at a particular time, but these myths about Gilgamesh have circulated for longer than the text has been written. And so there are different iterations of the text depending on the oral tradition that carried it from one place to another. So we have little things that have been added. There's an extra tablet that kind of tacks on an extra story. Um, but yes, the Gilgamesh story is a great work of literature. Well, how do we get it? Well, like we said, we had an archaeological finding, and that's really how we get it. Before that, we had small references in Greek and Roman literature. We didn't have the text. Um, Now, going back to our guy Ashurbanipal, that Assyrian king that we've been studying, in 1849 there was an archaeological excavation at his palace. His palace was none other than in Nineveh. Ashurbanipal, of course, was king in 669 up to his death in 631 BC. In this dig, they found an ancient library, and they found these tablets, which we were able to translate in the 1870s. This is how we get the Gilgamesh story. And I think I've showed this picture before, but this is what we found, right? We don't find a perfect leather-bound copy. We have ambiguous evidence here. And so this has been a monumental task to translate this text. We find other tablets. This is another example of a tablet. For example, that was found actually after the invasion of Iraq. And some of the museums had been looted, and people were smuggling these ancient artifacts out of the country, selling them on the black market. And let me see, the Suleymaniye Museum started an initiative to try and buy these things before they went and disappeared on the black market. And so they were able to purchase this tablet. It turns out it was a tablet from the Gilgamesh text. And so this was acquired in 2011, which is crazy that this was not really known to be a Gilgamesh tablet until 2011. Okay, now our edition of the text is David Ferry's translation of Gilgamesh. I've got it here with me. Ferry is a poet. It's a really great translation, nice and short, and we're not even reading the last tablet because that's the one that's kind of a separate story. Okay, so what stuck out to you about the Epic of Gilgamesh? For me, what stuck out was just the setting, imagining myself in this place, this description of the walls of Mesopotamia, this emphasis on water as well in Mesopotamia. The opening lines kind of tell us that we're not in Kansas anymore. This is Uruk, the city of Gilgamesh, the wild ox, son of Lugal Banda. All right. It says the outer wall shines in the sun like brightest copper. The inner wall is beyond the imagining of kings. Study the brickwork. Study the fortification. Climb the great ancient staircase to the terrace. I mean, this is really an impressive place that is not comparable to our modern understanding. Okay, so let's look at tablet 1. I'm just going to take these in turn. Reading about Gilgamesh, how was he characterized? What kind of a person is this? Our hero, you might say. So yes, he is a wall builder in the city of Uruk. He develops the city, leader of urbanization. but he's described also as Gilgamesh, the strongest one of all, the perfect, the terror. I get chills when I read that line. Uh, this is not somebody to be trifled with. This is not even, you might even hesitate to say, this is not even a good person. This is really somebody to be intimidated by. It says that Gilgamesh is not even fully human. He is actually 2/3 God, 1/3 man, and you can try and work out how that happened ancestrally. I'm not quite sure, but this is his heritage. We're also introduced to a character named Enkidu in Tablet 1. Who is this guy, Enkidu? How is he characterized? Well, it says that Gilgamesh, um, in his kingdom, was not very well loved. The old man, so this is page 4, the old man said, "Is this the shepherd of the people, the wise shepherd, the protector?" And they complained to the gods about their king. Basically, Gilgamesh was kind of sleeping with anybody's brides, not being a good shepherd to his people. Nobody is safe around Gilgamesh. There is no withstanding the desire of the wild ox. And so the gods say, well, we need to balance out Gilgamesh. Let's create his double. Let's create his counterpart. And so they create Enkidu, a wild man, not a man of the city, a man of the wilderness, hairy and uncultured. And so Enkidu is sent by the gods as the counterpart, the counterpoint to Gilgamesh. And so this is something we've kind of addressed, but one of the main themes in this story is this dichotomy between civilization and wilderness. You have the city and you have nature, and they are at odds with each other. And the embodiment of the city is Gilgamesh. He creates the city, but he doesn't rule well, right? It's a disordered rule. He's doing things wrongly. He's abusing power. Um, and he's countered by Enkidu, this man of the wild, but really untamed, right? So civilization tames, wilderness is untamed. And so there's this tension in ancient literature. We see this in Genesis as well, between the garden, the tamed garden, and the untamed wilderness creatures. For example, in Genesis 3, we have the Nahash. The serpent was more crafty. The serpent, that's the word serpent there, Nahash. The Nahash was more crafty than any other creature of the field. The field, not the plowed field, but the wilderness field, the chaotic wilderness there. So we have the garden, the tamed area, and the field. This is just common in this ancient literature. So I want you to look out for that theme. Another example biblically of this civilized versus wild tension is the story of Jacob and Esau. The twin brothers, and you could pause and read this, but of course one is the skilled hunter, the wild man, and the other one is kind of the civilized brother, the non-hairy brother. And so we see this popping up again and again. All right. Tablet 2, Enkidu is tamed. The wild man is tamed. How does this happen? Well, he kind of gets spied out. The locals are terrified. And so they say, well, we need to tame this wild man. And what's the best way to tame him? They actually find a woman from the city, kind of a prostitute. They send her out to teach him a woman's ways. And so through this sexual encounter with the prostitute, Enkidu is tamed. And in a sense, the language of the text is that he really becomes human. He's no longer one of the animals here. He's brought into civilization. He's brought into culture through this action. He becomes self-aware. Um, she encourages him to go into the city. They go out into the city, and Enkidu locates Gilgamesh. Um, it says in the text that Gilgamesh is actually right about to cross over the marriage threshold of the bedroom. Um, he's kind of caught Gilgamesh at a bad time, and instead Enkidu says, "Well, my purpose here is to be your counterbalance," and they start to wrestle. And they have this great wrestling match, the two of them on the threshold of this wedding bed. Um, and finally, what they find is that they are equally matched, and they pledge themselves as partners. They are going to go forward in life as partners, as friends, because they are equally matched. Of course, this wrestling match, the equal wrestling match in ancient literature, is another common theme. From Genesis 32, we have the narrative of Jacob wrestling with God. And you can read this if you want to pause it and read it in your own time. You could definitely do that. I just want to point out that we see this theme popping up again and again. Okay, so in Tablet 3, we find Gilgamesh wanting to set out on a quest, and his mother goes. So on page 19 of our text, Gilgamesh and Enkidu together went to the palace, Agalma, to Ninsun, the all-knowing, the mother of Gilgamesh. And so they kind of tell her their plan to go out on a quest, and she makes sacrifices for them to Shamash, and that is the same Shamash that we saw with um, the law code of Hammurabi. So they want to get the favor of the gods before they go on their quest. All right. Now in tablets 4 and 5, the quest begins. They Gilgamesh begins to have a series of kind of portentous dreams about his quest, and they're terrifying him. Gilgamesh wants to kind of obtain glory on this quest, but now he's having second thoughts. Um, he thought he wanted fame, and now he's thinking about going back. But Enkidu kind of encourages him. Every time he has a dream, Enkidu explains it in a way to say, "Oh no, this is actually a good thing. Your prophetic dreams are confirming that this will go well." So, for example, let me see. So here, page 23, Gilgamesh says, "In the dream that I had, a great bull head was thrashing over my body in glory, bellowing over me. Me helpless on the ground, the breath of the bull snout breathing on me. The bellowing noise shook the earth and broke it open. And then somebody brought me water." This is a terrifying dream, right? And Enkidu then says, "Oh, the dream that you dreamed is fortunate. The bull you dreamed of is not the enemy, the demon enemy guardian of the forest." They're going to a forest to fight this demon. Enkidu says, "No, the bull is actually Shamash. This wrestling is his blessing. The one who brought you water is your father." So he kind of explains these things away and to kind of keep Gilgamesh encouraged. So they finally make it to the sacred forest, and they do have a fight with this demon creature named Humbaba. You might also see it written as Huwawa in the text. So where is this sacred forest? Well, there actually is this sacred forest in this region of the Fertile Crescent, a cedar forest in Lebanon. And you've probably heard of the cedars of Lebanon before. Really impressive trees, up to 115 feet tall. This was supposed to be the place where the gods lived in this kind of pantheistic understanding, the home of the gods. and yes, we kind of all are in a mountainous region right here on the edge of the Fertile Crescent. The altitude is 6,600 feet, so triple the altitude of Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, for example. So this is the place where they have this battle with the demon Huwawa, also known as Humbaba. Um, so here you can see Huwawa in the middle. You've got Enkidu and Gilgamesh on either side. They really they're not going to win, but Shamash, the god, steps in and helps them. And between the three of them, they rip out the tongue of Huwawa and slay this beast. Now, what was Huwawa doing there? Well, the forest, of course, is the sacred forest, sacred to the gods, the sacred cedars. And he's kind of actually protecting the entrance of the forest. He's a guard, you might say. And so this is an amazing accomplishment for Gilgamesh to do this, but it is a little bit concerning. It definitely gets the gods' attention that somebody has entered into their sacred forest, killed the guardian, and cut down one of the trees. Now, this wood is prime lumber. They want to bring this wood back to Uruk. They want to build something there out of it. They want to build a big gate to kind of become the central feature of Gilgamesh's city, right? This is going to make a name for him among the city-states. So they build a little boat out of the wood and they take this gate. And as we said, this is going to get the gods' attention, right? Who is this human waltzing in, cutting down our trees, killing our guardians? Some of them are going to be impressed, some of these gods, and some of them are going to be a little bit frustrated. One of the deities that specifically takes notice of Gilgamesh is Ishtar, also known as Inanna. This is the daughter of the god Anu. She is the queen of heaven in Mesopotamian in the Mesopotamian mythology. And so she is one of the Anunnaki, one of the great gods. She is the goddess of love, of sex, and of war. Kind of an imposing figure. And she does not have the best history of interaction with humanity. As a matter of fact, she has taken on many human lovers, but they always come to a bitter end. And Gilgamesh is in her sights. And yes, there is a temple to this god in his city, and so they revere her, they worship her. But Gilgamesh is not going to opt in to this relationship. She kind of tries to consort with him, and he turns her down. And this does not go over well. Ishtar is not pleased. She does not like to be spurned, especially not by a human. So she sends in the bull of heaven, a great destructive bull, to basically destroy the city of Uruk, to teach Gilgamesh a lesson. Well, the bull goes down to Uruk, and these two great fighters, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, are there to fight. They slay the bull, Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and Enkidu kind of goes a little bit too far and is irreverent. He rips one of the haunches off the bull and chucks it up at Ishtar, basically threatening her as well, kind of standing defiant of her. And really, this is just too far. So at this point, keep in mind they've killed Huwawa, they've cut down a sacred tree, and they've killed the bull of heaven and chucked it at Ishtar. So finally, the gods say, "This has gone too far. This is a human we're dealing with. They have no right." And so there's an argument in heaven in chapter 7, tablet 7 of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Lil and Shamash debate with each other what the punishment ought to be. And they kind of come to the conclusion that Enkidu has to die. Gilgamesh, they're going to let him live, but Enkidu has to die. And it's really interesting language here. I'm going to go to page 37 just so that you can read this. He said the gods were anthropomorphic. They have personalities. They are human-like. They're not human. But listen to this. Angry Enlil said to Shamash, "You went with them as if you were their companion, day after day as they went up in their journey to violate the forest." So we have this accusation from one god to another that they are being too partial to these humans, these creatures that are there just to work. Okay. Um, Enkidu does die from this curse. Huala actually prophesied that Enkidu was going to die during the battle. And we see that Enkidu goes to this place called the House of the Dead. As a matter of fact, all humans go here in this world. This is not a pleasant place. This is a room of dust and nothingness. This is not a good existence for the good, a bad afterlife for the wicked. No, this is just a dusty tomb, the house of the dead. Okay. As he's dying, Enkidu curses several things. He curses the cedar gate that they built. He curses the hunter or the shepherd who found him originally, the one who sent that prostitute over to him who wanted to tame him. Enkidu curses the prostitute who slept with him, who civilized him. But finally, he kind of realizes to rage against the gods of heaven is futile. He was raging against them before, but now in death he changes his mind. What Enlil has ordered cannot be changed. Okay. Has Enkidu been civilized? Is he now a fully civilized human? Is he an example to the readers? And I think so. Okay. Tablet 8 begins with Enkidu's death, and Gilgamesh had heard him say, "Gilgamesh, who had encouraged me in battle, saying two people companions they can prevail. Now Gilgamesh is afraid, and he does not help me." So Gilgamesh, the great king, he was afraid in battle. They fought together, but now Gilgamesh can't aid Enkidu as he approaches death's doorstep. Who is this guy? This isn't the Gilgamesh that we met at the beginning, who would take every man's bride and not think twice. Okay. Gilgamesh honors Enkidu. Page 46. Let's go here. They get together statues. They get together copper workers. This is interesting. I want to read this line here on page 46. Gilgamesh says, "May the harlot weep for you who showed you her body and showed you the things that a woman knows how to do. May the priests mourn in the rite of lamentation. Listen to me, elders of the city. It is Enkidu, the companion, whom I weep for." And so they decide we're going to honor Enkidu with a statue. And now he says, actually, that he is going to become like Enkidu. He says, I want to go out into the wilderness. This city life is no longer for me. Now that you are gone, Enkidu, Gilgamesh will wear the skins of beasts. He will wander, hairy-bodied, grieving in the wilderness. So Gilgamesh is going to kind of go on a quest now on his own of self-discovery after he's lost his best buddy. Okay. When we find Gilgamesh on his quest, he's worried about his own death. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to suffer that same fate. And so the story kind of transitions, and now Gilgamesh is looking for a way out. Is there a way for man to become immortal? He's heard a story that there was a guy who did that, a man named Utnapishtim. How did that happen? Well, Utnapishtim lived during the great flood in the story, and he survived and was actually granted immortality by the gods. So Gilgamesh wants to figure out maybe if that could work for him as well. Of course, the journey to get to Utnapishtim is not easy. He lives in the middle of nowhere, and so especially now that Gilgamesh doesn't have a traveling companion, he's worried that he won't be able to make it. So he goes on his quest in Tablet 9 and arrives at a garden. This is what it's described as looking like. I just copied the text into an AI generator just to show you what AI thinks this tavern looks like by the sea. Gilgamesh has been wandering. He looks terrible, and he arrives at this kind of paradise. The tavern keeper says, "What is going on with you? What are you here for? Why do you look so rough?" And Gilgamesh shares his struggle. And the tavern keeper gives Gilgamesh a little bit of advice. And this is key advice. It's not just advice for Gilgamesh, but this is kind of something that we might say is central to the Mesopotamian worldview. Gilgamesh, since life is short, you need to take pleasure while you can. Don't try and be immortal. Enjoy your short life. And so this does connect to the hedonist worldview. Take your pleasure where you can get it. But of course, Gilgamesh doesn't want to hear that, right? He wants to be immortal. He makes his way to Utnapishtim, and he has to cross a ferry to get there. And of course, it goes terribly. He has to build his own punting pole, kind of similar to a gondola punting pole, to get across these waters, to get all the way to Utnapishtim. Finally, he gets out there to Utnapishtim. And Utnapishtim isn't really going to be super helpful at first. He doesn't know why Gilgamesh wants to be immortal, doesn't believe that it's right for him to seek it. So let's go to page 64. All right, this is Utnapishtim speaking to Gilgamesh. You who were born the son of a goddess mother, why do you grieve because of a mortal father? How long does a building stand before it falls? How long a contract last? How long will brothers share inheritance before they quarrel? Time after time the river has risen and flooded. How long is the eye able to look at the sun? See how the dead and the sleeping resemble each other. Seen together they are the image of death. All right. Utnapishtim is telling him that this is a pointless task, right? The gods are the ones who establish life and death, so stop fighting so hard against them. All right. In Tablet 11, we get the story of the flood, how Utnapishtim survives the flood, and really it's not from his own cleverness, but one of the gods seeks out Utnapishtim. You could read this on page 66. He tells him how to survive. It's just kind of interesting, this flood account. It's not a worldwide flood. It seems to focus just on one city. Utnapishtim is given 7 days to build his boat, and then there are 7 days of flooding. So of course this is different from the Genesis narrative. It says that with the flood, the gods are terrified of this flood. They're kind of climbing away from it. So it's really just an interesting narrative here. Just like in the Genesis story, Utnapishtim releases birds to try and find dry land. But the birds, the order there is different. First, he releases a dove, then he releases a swallow, and then a raven. So this is a key difference between Gilgamesh and the Genesis flood narrative. Okay, so Utnapishtim shares his story. Gilgamesh is still wanting to be immortal. And finally, Utnapishtim kind of caves. He gives Gilgamesh a challenge, and he says, If you can follow this challenge, then I will say that you're worthy of immortality. All you have to do is stay awake for 1 week. And Gilgamesh, after all of his travels, all of his heroism, everything he's gone through, he falls asleep immediately. He doesn't make it. He's too weak. He's too human. He can't do it. Utnapishtim kind of feels bad for Gilgamesh, and he says, well, I'll just tell you, there is a plant. It's kind of like what we would think of the Fountain of Youth, this little plant of youth. He says, I can tell you where to find it. He gives him one last quest, and Gilgamesh does find that plant to keep him youthful. He locates it, he gets it, he's taking it home, and then a serpent steals in and steals the plant when Gilgamesh isn't paying attention. And so his last little bit of hope for immortality is gone. It's robbed from him. Gilgamesh, the great king, has gone on this journey, and he returns to his city empty-handed. And the Epic of Gilgamesh concludes in the same way that it started. It tells us once again to look at the great city of Uruk, look at the walls, admire the brickwork. This is the same conclusion. So really we kind of have this moral at the end that humans need to know their place in relation to the gods. We're destined to die. We can create some amazing things in our cities, but we ourselves are only going to live on, maybe through our stories, but certainly not in our bodies. And so that's kind of the end of the Epic of Gilgamesh.